Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Society of Teachers of Family Medicine, our first webinar ever for the Underrepresented in Medicine initiative, which is supported by the STFM Foundation, and we're very appreciative of this opportunity. Before we begin with our webinar, which is titled Code Blue, Resuscitating Our Involvement in Scholarly Research Through Mentorship, I want to take a moment to talk about some housekeeping items. First, this is a space for you to ask questions related to mentorship or having a mentor or being a mentee yourself, whether it means that you are underrepresented or you're working with others who are underrepresented. Ask those questions using the Q&A feature that's available to you at the very bottom. In addition, I want to make sure that you all also consider the fact that we are going to be having conversations about how to put what we're discussing into action. And that's going to be really important. So again, ask those questions, make sure that you're engaged. Ultimately, the goal for our programming is to increase underrepresented in family medicine who are involved in scholarly research activities. So whatever we can do to support you, please ask those questions and we'll get things started. We'll have our presenters introduce themselves. And this is one of a set of ongoing webinars, Twitter chats, and workshops, and we'll email you with any other upcoming events. So I will pass it on to our presenters. So again, welcome everybody.
Hi, everyone. I am Angela Antonikowski. I am the Chief Health Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Officer at Albany Medical Center, and I am the Associate Dean of Wellness in the Medical College.
And good evening, everyone. My name is Tyson Pankey, and I am a second-year clinical health psychology fellow at Mayo Clinic and have had the opportunity to work with Dr. Cesar Gonzalez at Mayo Clinic in the family medicine residency program. I'm particularly interested in continuing to cultivate a happy, healthy, and high-performing underrepresented minority workforce. And so that is some of the reasons why I'm so excited to be part of this webinar this evening with you all.
So that's great. So why don't we jump in and get started? So let's just cover some of our learning objectives. So as we proceed, we're going to really focus on identifying the benefits associated with scholarly research. But in order to do that, we really have to be able to identify effective mentorship characteristics. And once we do that, we're then going to talk a little bit about how to effectively engage in a mentorship relationship. And we're conceptualizing this as a bi-directional, active, personal, reciprocal process. So that's what we have on our agenda. So before we get started, let's do our first poll. We want to get a sense of who we have with us today. And so we're going to pull up that polling. And so if folks, we'll give folks about 30 seconds or so. Just let us know a little bit about who you are. Are you from UME as a med student, GME, faculty, or maybe you're somebody else? So let us know. Oh, look at that. All right. Maybe okay, great. That is good to know. All right, so looks like quite a bit of faculty and other there. Gotcha. Okay. I'm going to switch gears a bit.
All right. Yep. I'm gonna take over the PowerPoint here. Let's see. Okay, so, in order to kick this off, I think it's really important for us to be understanding, why is this an important topic for us to be talking about? Why do we need to increase URM or URIFM engagement in scholarly research activities? Well, it's really quite straightforward. With this physician shortage that we have, we are directly continuing to undermine our ability to create novel and innovative solutions to ongoing healthcare problems that we experience, directly health disparities, particularly among marginalized, underrepresented communities that many of us are a part of. And we're really impacting our ability, or shortchanging in some ways, our ability to advance patient and community health engagements. So these are some of the same reasons why we need a diverse healthcare workforce, particularly in family medicine, where many of our trainees and physicians are boots on the ground. We are embedded in our communities. We are directly facing our patients. And so we really see and interact with these very challenges that are undermining health, again, at the patient and community level. So we really need active participation, active minds coming to the table to generate more and more novel solutions to increase our capacity to give the best healthcare to those that we serve. And now, why is our presence so low? These are multifactorial. We could have a million reasons why we've identified this shortage or lack of representation in research. A couple of those things include myths about research. So many of us grow up seeing images of bench science, white mice, tubes, science tubes, something that just doesn't feel very relatable, or something that we can really connect to. We have this image of what research is, and sometimes that image and representation just isn't accurate for all the other things that research can be. We also have a lack of visible role models. So many of us just don't simply see other people that we relate to or connect with in some identifiable way that suggests that's something that I could do, perhaps. So this lack of visible role models really is such a problem. And then self-doubt and ability. So if I'm not seeing role models, if I'm not being talked to about opportunities for research engagement, I might really believe that that's not a skill set that I have or possess or could be successful with. And then again, this lack of mentorship. So even if I don't have very much belief in my ability to participate, perhaps a mentor could help me to develop that efficacy. But with a lack of mentorship, perhaps that talent goes uncultivated. But there's many, many other reasons as well. Systemic racism is probably one of the biggest and most important words to name. That there are just, again, countless systems in place that really infiltrate our lives and contribute to a lack of development over the training time course that leads to this lack of representation. Now, importantly, few problems, including this lack of participation, this lack of engagement in research, can actively be solved without research. So many in the social sciences have even started to study what can we do to contribute to enhance the participation of individuals in research. We know that this is vital to our future. So how can we really tackle this problem, and what can we understand about it? And what some research suggests is that our motivation to engage in research is influenced by specific factors. Now, the good news is the first two, these are no-brainers. Curiosity and stimulation, or another word for that is need for challenge. The fact that students have pursued medicine, the fact that individuals have pursued medicine suggests we're curious. The fact that you engaged in medicine means you have a need for challenge. You like to be pushed, you like to be challenged, you like to really use that brain. And so it's really these last two factors that are really, really more and more important. these perceptions of research. So can I develop a positive association, a positive perception about my ability to impact my world, my work, my community through participating in research? And can I have a sense of positive self-efficacy, a belief in myself that I can participate? This is something that's within my skill set and I can be successful at it. These things are really, really important. Intrinsic motivation is there, and then we just need to continue to cultivate that so that people can take that next step in terms of engagement in scholarship and research. And then, of course, this is important, more and more important when we're talking about underrepresented minorities, particularly those who have intersecting minority identities. So thinking about even the intersections of gender, race, sexual orientation, gender expression, all of these things are so important, and all of these things can contribute to our perceptions of ourselves as researchers and our perceptions of our own abilities to be researchers. So we're going to fire up a second poll here, and we want to know from you all this evening, what were some of those early messages that you took in about research? Were they positive? Were they negative? Were they indifferent or neutral? Let us know. We're going to fire up this poll here for you all. So we've got a fair split here. So about 30% saying positive, 30% saying neutral, and just 40% saying negative. But this is really important to understand. These early messages really stick with us. And if they're not overridden, then they kind of stay with us and they continue to shape some of the decisions that we make along our training careers. There we go. And would you look at this? Interesting enough, here's another example of how our perceptions are shaped. Look at this Google search that I did for physician scientist. Does anyone notice anything? The faces and the images are quite consistent. They are predominantly white. So once again, this type of messaging that is infiltrating many of our textbooks, our classrooms, our Google searches really do have an influence and an impact on how we see ourselves and who we believe should be doing what. So again, this is really just highlighting our perceptions matter, and we really need to increase the visibility of underrepresented researchers in order to continue to cultivate a pathway for other people to participate too and see themselves as we can be researchers. Now, why does mentorship matter? I hope that many of you all participating here today already have a sense of that since we have so many faculty participating. But mentorship matters because it's linked to mentee productivity, self-efficacy, and career satisfaction. So we know that this helps people to get to where they're going more quickly, more easily, and with greater confidence in their skills and their abilities. We also know that mentorship contributes to academic success, particularly for those in STEM fields. So that active and engagement, that active mentorship, someone carrying, helping to carry the load and helping you to move forward in your own professional goals is so integral. So we need mentors. We need those individuals that are walking alongside trainees as they advance through their career pathways. So at this juncture, I'm going to pass it back off to Dr. Antonikowski. Dr. Antonikowski, yep, I think you're muted.
Okay. Yeah, you got me? All right, great. So we know that mentorship matters. Of course, not all mentorship is created equal, particularly when we're talking about mentorship of URI-FM individuals. And so there are many different factors to consider in terms of mentors, incorporating issues related to imposter syndrome, stereotype threat, mentors understanding their own implicit bias, ways of actively engaging allyship. But we're going to spend a little bit more time talking about what effective scholarly mentorship in general looks like. And there are so many different definitions of mentorship, but some work by Dr. Linda D'Angelo, 2016, identified characteristics of effective mentorship for URM undergraduate students, in an attempt to fill this gap for URM representation. And through this work, I identified some key aspects of a powerful mentorship experience. And that includes focusing on achievement, having a relationship that is a reciprocal, personal relationship, a relationship where the mentor is an individual with more experience, influence, and achievement. And it's also a relationship where the mentor takes on emotional, psychological support and directly assisting with career aspirations and planning through role modeling. So effective mentorship, and in particular, effective scholarly mentorship, is intentional. And so, this work goes on to discuss how the mentoring relationship goes above and beyond what is expected, say, in academic settings, such as just picking courses and involving students in research. Effective scholarly mentorship URM students focuses on actively engaging and soliciting students and promoting graduate study when we're talking about on an undergraduate level as an attainable option. And so when we're talking about mentees, it's important for mentees to then, at this juncture, given some of the conversations which we've had, to kind of think about coming up with two names of potential mentors for scholarship. And so with that in mind, we then have to think about, well, wait a minute. Individuals may be thinking about a mentor, but also be thinking about the concept of sponsors or a coach. And so for people, mentors on the call, it's important to consider, wait a minute, am I actually acting in the capacity of a mentor, or maybe I'm acting in the capacity of a sponsor or a coach? So we're going to talk a little bit about what some of these differences could be. So if we're talking about being an effective mentor, let's talk a little bit about what a mentor is not. When we're thinking about sponsors, this is generally a person with, let's say, high status in an organization. This is an individual who can advocate for an individual's future successes. The sponsor sort of publicly supports you, right? That's the person that is talking you up in the chair meeting or something like that, right? But it's generally an influential person in your academic setting, provide opportunities for advancement and promotion. This is different from someone, let's say, who's a coach. A coach supports a learner in their efforts to achieve a specific personal or professional goal. Often your coach can be task-driven or singular in focus. You might even consider a parent probably could operate a little bit more in the coach role. But as you can see, this is different from being a mentor. So when we're talking about mentors, when we're trying to identify what are some effective mentor behaviors, we understand that the mentor supports mentees through formal or informal conversations about how to build skills, qualities, and confidence for career advancement. The mentor also passively or directly shares those unwritten rules or the hidden curriculum for advancement in an organization. So, for example, if an unwritten rule, right, is that you should sit on the IRB as a member. No one talks about that, but maybe that's one of those unwritten rules if you want to move up in a way. Generally, your mentor would be the person who would clue you in on that very vital information. And then the mentor also provides feedback to aid the mentee's personal and professional growth. And so, of course, you can have a sponsor, you can have a coach, and of course, you can have a mentor. And so I really like this quote from Kathy Hannon, who's National Managing Partner for Diversity and Corporate Responsibility at KPMG, who really spells out those roles and really help folks now to kind of think and identify what roles individuals can inhabit in terms of moving forward in terms of scholarly activity. So now that we sort of have that in mind, now that we kind of have a sense about who these individuals may be, and maybe thinking a little bit in your own circles, how do I then identify a mentor? Well, it's important to keep in mind that this is a process, right? So identifying and engaging in effective mentorship is a process where an individual would know their goal, do your research, make that ask, and then engage in behaviors of a good mentee or mentor, because that's important as well. So let's talk about this first step of knowing your goals, right? So while it may seem obvious, knowing your goals is incredibly important to ensure that both you and your mentor and mentees are working for the same end. So knowing your goals and continuing to revisit them throughout the relationship, because goals change, is important. But it also ensures that you and your mentor are staying on the same path. And identifying this early allows you to effectively identify a mentor and allows a mentor to effectively identify if they can be of best help to you given those goals. And so you can think about those goals from a short and long-term perspective. Consider 5-year plans and consider that mentor versus sponsor relationship. The next step, do your research, right? Identify who in your network or who in the network that you want to be in, maybe has accomplished some of those goals that you've previously identified, right? So who's in your network? What path did that individual take? Maybe I can have more than one mentor, which is true, right? And then make the ask, right? Reach out to your mentor, preferably in person, but of course it's the age of COVID, so there's no rules, right? We're just all kind of flying by the seat of our pants. But you would then articulate your goals, consider that elevator speech, if you would. Make the connections between your mentor's work and your goals, and then if possible, then sort of reach out. And one of the most important steps is to be a good mentee and mentor. So what this means is to remember that mentorship is an option, right? And so there are responsibilities, tasks that both as a mentor and a mentee, folks should engage in. So I'm going to pass this then back off.
Oops, I'm sorry, I forgot to unmute myself. But I really think about the mentor-mentee relationship as a bi-directional coordinated partnership that's really focused on specific goals. It is a dance, and that's what we're going to be talking about a little bit more here. Got a little bit of delay in my slides. There we go. So mentorship components. I think whether you are a mentor or a mentee, it's so integral that you understand that there are some core components that really help to make an effective relationship. One of the biggest and most important things is to have agreed upon expectations. When there's not an agreement, there are so many opportunities for misses, conflict, challenges. And so one of the things that we should do right at the outset is to develop some really shared understandings of what's going to happen. What is our meeting schedule? How often are we going to meet with one another? Is it going to be monthly, weekly, bi-weekly? We need to have an agreement in this area. And then how are we going to communicate with each other? Are we going to be communicating via text? Is it okay if I call you? Is this strictly via email? What are our shared understandings of the appropriateness of our communication plan? What are our goals and outcomes? And I mean specifically, what are our goals and outcomes? What are you specifically looking to get out of this relationship, and how can we measure it? It should be something that we can evaluate and measure. And then what are each the mentor and the mentee's inputs? So is the mentor going to give direct guidance, or are they going to be more hands-off in their approach? Again, mentors and mentees understanding what each person is going to contribute to the relationship is really important right at the beginning to make sure that it is meeting both people's needs. And then if or when conflict arises, how are we going to address it? Again, having this conversation up front early is so important to a successful relationship. All the time in every meaningful relationship, some hiccups are going to come along. We just want to know how we're going to move through those hiccups. Are we going to talk about it? And if so, how are we going to talk about it? Those things are so important. And then the other major component of mentorship is constructive feedback. So mentees need feedback in order to grow. And so mentors need to be prepared to give that constructive feedback. I would also note that we have lots of information and materials about how to give effective feedback. So that's also something that mentors should be talking about in order to make sure that safety, psychological safety is always maintained through the learning process. But absolutely, we need to also have some structured ideas about when constructive feedback will take place and how it's going to be delivered. We created this nice clean layout for you all as well in terms of optimizing a mentor-mentee meeting. So there are some kind of core ingredients that a successful meeting might have included in each relationship. So setting the agenda, and this is something that takes a little bit of forethought from mentors and mentees. What are specific goals of this meeting to make sure that at the end of it, we've accomplished, something that the mentor and the mentee both wanted to accomplish and needed to accomplish in order to move something forward. And if there are any pre-meeting assignments, we need to know what those are and have an expectation that they will be completed before the meeting takes place. And then developing any action items to discuss. What's on our agenda today? What is it that we need to absolutely make sure we've discussed or clarified by the end of this session together? We're always going to be communicating times and dates clearly. And what we recommend is that you're always setting up the next meeting by the time one meeting has ended. So when will we meet again? And then again, talking about, in summary, what have we taken away from the current meeting? Summarizing transition points within the agenda is also really important. That makes sure that the mentee is following along with the mentor as items are being discussed. So we have, we've talked about, this upcoming abstract, and we've understood that, by the next time we meet, you will have completed the edits from this abstract. And then at the conclusion of the meeting, we're going to be summarizing any big decisions that have been made, any new assignments that have been created, and then clarifying for each person if there are specific tasks that they are in charge of. So at the end of my meeting, I will say, my understanding is that I will do this by the time we're having our next meeting. Again, this is to make sure that both parties are clear about the next steps and what their current responsibilities are. Now, There are 1,000,001 resources out there that can really help mentors and mentees to have optimal relationship and really maximize the benefits of the career development process. So we want to talk about just a couple of those tools. And if you all have more tools that we haven't talked about today, please share those with us in the chat function. That would be awesome so we can continue to have a learning and sharing community. So I think about a couple different tools and their ability to do a couple different things. So in terms of self-assessment, SWOT analysis, which I'll talk about a little bit more in a moment, and personal branding, these are specific tools that really help to clarify a mentee's strengths, their growth areas, and their values. This is really about kind of consolidating some information and getting a sense of where someone is and who someone is. And then at the bottom here, there's SMART goals and individual development plans. So I really think about these tools as being able to link growth to actionable goals. We want to continue to break things down so that there's clear ways for people to achieve what they're out to achieve. Now, for the sake of time, I'm not going to play this video with you all here today, but Dr. Thais Gaines is a ER doc, and she also has a background in journalism and business, and she's created a website that is all about doctors developing their brands. This is about a 6-minute video, so I really encourage you to check it out on YouTube. It's really, really great, and it's really about helping each person, no matter if you're UME, GME, faculty, understanding how to continue to brand yourself and market yourself to others. She really suggests that all of us have a brand, whether you want to or not. You have a reputation, you have an image, and so you might as well be cultivating that and creating it in a way that is optimal for your success, one that's coherent. So she walks you through 6 really great and easy steps in this YouTube video. So please, please, please check it out. It's really nice. And for those who aren't as familiar with even the term of branding, why is it important? Why should I engage in personal branding? Well, it really provides mentees a clear structure and focus. It really helps us to identify this is who this person is about. And that can be so profound in terms of job placement, internship matching, residency matching, all sorts of things when we know who you are and what you really are about and what drives you. It really helps you to unite your personal and your professional identities. We're all made up of so many pieces, and that really brings us together as a whole professional. And then it allows for more effective marketing and networking. So if my mentor knows a little bit about me and what really drives me, they are able to then talk to others on my behalf and also continue to push forward my brand to other people. And then it really builds trust and credibility. We know who you are when you're walking into the room. We have a sense of, again, what you're bringing to the table and how you can be a benefit to a team or to a research project. And Dr. Antonikowski mentioned this earlier, but when we go through that branding process, we're also then able to give our elevator speech. This is something that I think many of us hear, but we want to be able to give a pretty concise narrative about who we are if we have a brief interaction with other professionals. So at minimum, we want to be ready and teed up to give our name, where we are in our training and what institution we might be affiliated with. And then I think this is fun. What is our superpower or our X factor? What really differentiates us from our peers? And then what drives my passion? What keeps you up at night? What gets you excited? We want you to be able to articulate that clearly to other people. And then as you're continuing to figure out how you can continue to engage in scholarly research, we want to know what are some of those research or clinical interests, because that can continue to help us get you linked into research opportunities. And then again, knowing what are those short and long-term goals. People are curious, and so we want to have that information at the ready. So spending the time up front to identify and sit down with yourself to identify and figure out what those things are really going to be beneficial. Now here's the SWOT analysis. The SWOT analysis stands for strengths, opportunities, weaknesses, and threats. I really like this tool for mentors and mentees to potentially work through together. So this would start with the mentee perhaps taking the lead. What are my identified strengths? What are the things that I think I'm very good at? And I would say here that I really want us to be thinking about this, because I think for underrepresented minorities, we can often underestimate or undersell what our strengths are. So I think mentors and mentees really need to be focused in on what are these strengths. Mentors, if you notice that there aren't many strengths, this is a direct intervention point to say, hey, wait a minute, you have many, many strengths. Let's really talk about this, because that's also going to be efficacy building. And then we can pivot to those weaknesses. Okay, what are the things that I don't feel as great at yet? Where are the opportunities for me to grow a little bit? That's also going to help the mentor create some opportunities to maximize that growth. And then once we've identified strengths and weaknesses, we can hone in on what are some opportunities that are around us in the environment for us to continue to advance development and growth. Perhaps this workshop or this work group even that we're a part of tonight is an opportunity. Here's an opportunity to continue to engage with other like-minded peers, other resources, other people that can continue to help you to stay plugged in and get you engaged in research. And then similarly, what are the threats that are around us in the current environment? Perhaps for many people, this is something I hear a lot. I want to be engaged in research, but I don't have a lot of time in my schedule, or I don't have access to many research tools or engines. If you can name that threat, then once again, your mentor and you can partner together to become more strategic to figure out how are we going to overcome these threats. How do we avoid or have other things that can supplement something that otherwise might kind of get in your way? And then SMART goals. As a behaviorist, this is something that I talk about a lot when I'm trying to encourage some behavior change. We want our goals to be something that are very measurable. So SMART goals are about something being measurable, specific, measurable, adjustable, realistic, and timely. So this is the way that we make sure that there's something concrete that we can really track and monitor over time. So as you're thinking about your own development as a mentee or a mentor, we want to think about, what are you hoping to gain from this experience perhaps? What am I seeking to accomplish? And what do I need at this time in order to make those dreams or ideas come to pass, come to fruition? When we have those big ideas, we can then boil them down into very specific SMART goals. Again, this is helping us to track and monitor how things are going. We want to build in some accountability to make sure that your mentor can help you and monitor and move things along in a way that is linked to actionable goals and success. And I'd also say, that it's so important that we recognize that all experiences count. Again, when it comes to underrepresented minorities, sometimes we are underselling our accomplishments or overlooking many of the things that we have been engaged in along the way. Community service engagement, non-traditional career paths. These are actually such important things that shape who you are, shape how you see the world, shape some of the ideas and perspectives that you bring to the research table. And we need that. Previous employment, advocacy work, public health engagement, these are all assets. These are all strengths. And so we really need to bring those to the forefront. Even if it's non-medically related, it's still important, and it still gives you perspective, and it still makes you a dynamic leader and contributor to the medical workforce and the research community. So mentors, again, take the lead here in making sure that your mentees identify and understand all the things that they've done that make them so excellent. And then imposter syndrome. such an important topic also for mentors and mentees to be aware of. So what we know about imposter syndrome, which is a term that was coined by a psychologist, is that we all experience it. It's this feeling of fraudulence that I'm not really supposed to be where I am. I'm not really credible. My accomplishments don't really mean much. But the important thing about imposter syndrome is that we have to really actively attack it, particularly because, again, it is universal. It's a really common experience for most of us to feel. And in order to move through it, we name it, we talk about it, we process it in order to realize, oh, it's not just me that sometimes feels this way. It's also important to recognize, again, because it is universal, this is not a disorder, it's not a condition, it's not linked to mental health symptoms, it's not meant to depression. It's a universal feeling that we can move through. So that's why we say you name it to tame it. This is also a TED Talk. I really encourage you to check it out. It's about, I think, 5 minutes long, really fantastic. So again, if you're a mentor, share it and show it to mentees. And if you're a mentee, check it out for yourself. Again, such a common experience for all of us. And the problem is not many of us are always talking about it. So name it to tame it. And I know Dr. Antonikowski brought up this quote, but I'll read it here. This is from Maya Angelou. So she writes, I've written 11 books, but each time I think, uh-oh, they're going to find out now. I've run a game on everybody, and they're going to find me out. Now, Maya Angelou is one of the most prolific writers in our history. And so this really just attests to the fact that even the best and brightest minds in our society have struggled and experienced this feeling of imposter syndrome. It really is universal. And so we wrote here and we talk about vulnerable leadership because there's a remarkable opportunity for mentors to take the lead in some vulnerability and sharing, to say, I also remember struggling, feeling that way, sometimes doubting if I had it, but sharing that with mentees is so valuable. And it really makes a difference. So be vulnerable, share some of your own experiences at a more personal level in order to really normalize the growing pains that many mentees are going through. I love the ending of this YouTube or TED Talk rather. It says, and I believe this so strongly for all of our community here today, you have talent, you are capable, and you belong. You have everything that you need to be an active and amazing contributor to our research workforce. And we're so happy to have you here. And we want to continue to support you along your way. So finally, there's some tips here that help to be a successful mentee. And so we'll wrap up here thinking about the mentee really driving the relationship. So we really want your voice to be at the front of this, not that you're just going completely along with whatever your mentor is saying and telling you to do, but rather that you are contributing. You're telling us where you want to go, and the mentor is helping and guiding you to get there. But this is mentee driven. And what does that mean? That means we do need you to spend some time really defining your goals. And you can get support from your mentor to do this, but that's really important, is having the space to figure out, what do you want for your life? What do you want for your career? And then you've really got to invest that time. I mean, you have to make those engagements with your mentor a priority in order to really maximize the most of its benefits. Develop that agenda, make sure that you have a clear and coherent idea of what you're wanting to accomplish in each meeting. Don't leave that up to the mentor, but really show that you're proactive, show that you're willing to take the lead by putting in that work to create that plan. And we also need to engage in those mentor-mentee relationships with some openness. So you're going to receive feedback. You're going to get some constructive feedback, again, that's meant to help you to grow. And so we want you to be able to receive it, chew on it, think about how that fits in your life, and think about how you want to adopt some of those modification changes over time. and ask for feedback. Again, that really shows your leadership and shows your investment in the relationship. Ask for what you could do differently the next time, or ask what someone else's perspective is. And then engage in some reflection. That's also how we grow. So take some time to really boil down what's been happening, what feedback you've been taking, what experiences you've been having. And if you're wanting to go into a different direction based on the experiences that you've had, that's okay too. But just bring that up into the conversation so that your mentor continue to adjust and move with you. Of course, definitely take advantage of opportunities as they come along, but don't be afraid to say like this opportunity seems like a better fit for me than this opportunity. I think it's really just about continuing to be honest about what makes most sense for you in terms of where you're going. But as those opportunities come in, make sure that you're really thinking about, is this really going to help me? And oftentimes they are, especially if your mentor is suggesting it or recommending it. And if you're confused about why your mentor is recommending something, ask them. Is there a particular reason that you were encouraging me to do this? Ask that question so you can get some more clarity. And then certainly continue to look for those opportunities to network. And so your mentor is so vital in that way. Tag along or ask to tag along with them if they're participating in meetings so that you can be a little bit behind the scenes or in the scene with them and continue to make new connections with other people. And then finally, and most importantly, gratitude, gratitude, gratitude. So when you are able to develop a really successful mentorship relationship, I think anybody who has had a mentor knows just how satisfying and just how rich of an experience that is. So being able to tell your mentor how much you have benefited from their help and how much you appreciate their time and guidance is just really nice. That can be a small note from time to time, in-person shout outs, but really express that gratitude. And mentors do that too. I think, again, these are all bi-directional. And so really, I think almost everything that a mentee can do, a mentor can show themselves in a lot of different ways as well. All right, so I hope that you've enjoyed the content that we have shared with you all this evening. Here are all of our names. We are all a part of the same STFM work group that's here to again, advance the research career path in family medicine. So if you enjoy this content, continue to connect with us, continue to follow us on Twitter at the hashtag listed below. And I think we have some time here to open things up for some questions.
Yeah, we do. So I'm taking a look in the Q&A, and I'll just kind of present a question or two. So one of the questions that was presented was, how can you help URM mentees find people who share their research interest in community work, cultural, ethnic issues, if they're having trouble finding collaborative in these areas? I can say one of the ways that I have helped mentees is, if we think back at that slide where we said all experiences matter, right? And so many times, mentees may be coming to you from other areas. They may have some extensive work histories. They may be coming from a public health space. I've had mentees connect with the School of Public Health and find a connection there. I've also had mentees, look at the work which you like, look at some of the journal articles which you've liked, and I've bridged gaps with mentees to then be able to then collaborate with those folks. So again, I think when we start to just rewrite this narrative about the sort of boundaries around scholarship, we will be in a position to reach out to areas like social work, public health, epidemiology, and find other individuals in those areas and sort of bridge that gap. Other thoughts from the panel?
So one of the tools that I've often used too is to do a reverse search for topics using the NIH reporter. And so, and I'll post the link on the NIH reporter. And so essentially what you can do is type in topics that you're interested, and you can see what researchers are funded in that topic. You'll be pleasantly surprised that there's plenty of family medicine involved faculty in the departments who have NIH funds. So starting to email them through the doing the search for keywords, and that's one way that you can definitely start to find individuals who share the same interests.
Yeah, that's an awesome resource. That's a really great resource and a great tool. Great, let's see. So another question here. As a mentor who is white and who considers themselves to be an accomplice or ally, is it okay to ask URM mentees about their identity or to discuss racial issues? Does this come off insensitive? Well, you know, that's a great question. I think it's really important, again, to consider that this relationship is two-way. And so as a mentor, you're also talking about your background as well. The reality is that these issues of identity are incredibly important in terms of the mentor-mentee relationship. And talking about these issues will go a long way in terms of that reciprocal relationship. And it won't come off as insensitive as long as you don't approach it in an insensitive way. But, you know, again, I think if we go back to some of the slides where we talked about this relationship is intentional from the beginning. Goals are clarified. You know, the communication is really set up early. And if you're setting up very early that this is an important factor, then when these issues come up and when you are bringing them up as salient, it's understood that that's an important part of the mentor-mentee relationship. But are there other thoughts on that?
Yeah, I certainly agree. I think I've always benefited from mentors treating me as a whole person, and my whole person has multiple minority identities. And so to bring that into the space is really important, and to be aware of even, you know, the institutional politics and climate, the national climate and politics, those all have an influence on mentee well-being. So being able to attend to that, I think, is so important. You know, other ways, again, that these are just questions, but can be so informative, is to ask people, what have your experiences and mentorship relationships been in the past? That can be an opportunity for mentees to share, and there's learning there too. Perhaps something felt really great with them in the past that they can share with you, and perhaps things didn't feel so good to them in previous relationships, and they can share that with you as well, in order for you all to then create a plan on how you are going to navigate the current relationship.
Yeah, definitely. So another question that was asked was, do mentors appreciate constructive feedback, or should one hold off? How do you give feedback to mentors? So that's a great question. We should probably do a whole nother webinar in terms of getting feedback, receiving it, all of that good stuff, right? So to be continued. Thank you for that question. No, but you know, so again, I think that we really have to flip the script about mentorship sort of being this relationship where two people are, you know, with each other, and then you just sort of leave it to a chance. In particular, when you're talking in the beginning about establishing the relationship with your mentor, and as a mentor, when you are talking about that with your mentee, you're setting the expectation very early that you will be looking for feedback, and you are wondering if they are looking for that too. So you're really setting that stage that this is a more sort of iterative process of getting and receiving feedback.
I agree. And I think, you know, I tend to think that it's important for the mentors to, at times, you probably have to ask, a couple times before mentees perhaps feel totally comfortable to start to dip into that water. But I do think continue to ask. And other ways to go about it is to say, what felt good about today's meeting or what went well. And then you can ask, what might you want to do differently? So again, that's another way to continue to kind of approach this feedback that, again, you might be looking to have, but recognizing that there is a power dynamic and it takes some time for mentees to feel totally comfortable, moving and engaging in that power dynamic. Just keep at it and make it as safe as possible to provide that feedback.
Yeah, and I think, keeping on that vein, it sounds like the name of the game is sort of constantly evaluate the relationship. So the conversation may have happened, in the beginning about feedback, and then it's a constant state of, bringing that up, creating psychological safety with your mentee, so that they can feel a level of comfort around giving feedback. And so another question asks, can we comment on special considerations when a mentor or mentee is assigned rather than sought or chosen? Also, what may be some issues when a mentor or mentee work with one another in a supervisory capacity? So, right, I'm guessing, and I think that question makes a lot of sense, but I'm guessing what it is sort of suggesting is that there may not be, let's say, necessarily a vetting process, but you're paired with an individual, and then how do you make that work? I think this is that great opportunity to recognize that even though you may be paired with an individual, both the mentor and mentee still have a responsibility to make the most of the relationship. So again, I think, depending on if you're working on scholarly activity, or maybe if you're working on research, or maybe if you're working on a special project in particular, with your mentee, you can continue to check in with respect to how things going, how are we keeping on your goals, and as a mentee, you can continue to keep that check in. So even if you're not necessarily selecting your mentor, you can still have some autonomy with respect to keeping the relationship or keeping those goals at the forefront, and be able to maintain communication is a key way of doing that.
Yeah, I think also recognizing, yes, building off of that, there's always something that you can learn and gain from the individuals that you're partnered with. And I think another thing is recognizing that people can have multiple mentors. So if you recognize that the mentor that you've been assigned is really good and helpful in this one area, but you're still looking for additional support or mentorship in another area, you can continue to identify that area and look for other mentors that can fill that role. Regardless of what that is. Perhaps, again, you're looking for a little bit more of an emotionally close or emotionally connected relationship. You can continue to find other mentors that can fill those gaps that you currently have in an assigned role. And then also mentors can continue to help navigate and connect mentees to other individuals. Again, if there's if there is an assignment, through that clear communication and dialogue, you can continue to help mentees get connected and plugged in with other individuals along the way.
Thank you both so much for the presentation, and thank you to our attendees for joining. We recognize that this is an investment, and we really appreciate that. And we hope that you look forward to receiving additional emails related to scholarship in family medicine. We're going to host not only webinars, but more interactive workshops where attendees can actually interact with each other and also the presenters. and more hands-on activities as well. So everything from how to do a literature review to how to use open source software so that you can continue to do some of your data analytics without having to rely on commercial software, to how to think about writing a manuscript or thinking about grant writing. So we really appreciate your time, and we recognize that in order to make change at the patient level in terms of under minority, racial, ethnic groups, we also need to make sure that we're also working in the scholarship realm so that it also trickles down. We really appreciate everyone's time, and I hope that you all have a wonderful rest of your night. So thank you very much, everyone. Take care.